Hey guys, it's Yo again. So here we are for episode 2 of the FUKs of our lives. We're gonna be telling the whole soap opera. Again, keep in mind about the video that you're watching here. It is just me knocking out some dailies on some farms. I'm not being completely too true to form here. I'm just kind of fucking off, collecting stuff and taking off the box. So, just my little fucking disclaimer here. So, I want to start with the fuck story. The fuck story, I told you a little bit in the last video about 420 and 491. Whenever 420 started, they were actually EOS there. I'm not sure exactly what the story was about that. Of course, that was before I was playing the game. But I do know that they had decided to go to 491. They were like, fuck this shit, we're getting out of here. So Fed went and started 491. And people started kind of moving over, I think, and very shortly after the beginning of the state, pirates came in. And when I say pirates, I mean, back then they didn't have a rule for the game where you had to ask for permission to get into the state if you were in the top 10 base mite. Now you actually, if you're really, really big and you're bigger than most players in the state, you have to ask permission. Back then you didn't have to do that. So they could just swoop in, take over, and tell you to fuck off. And that's what happened in 491. So very, very shortly after arriving there and starting the alliance, fuck was made an enemy of the state there because these big players came in, and at the time Fed was actually governor, I believe, when this all happened, and they came in and took over and took all of our weapons, all the SWPs. So 420 put their move from 420 to 491 on hold. I do believe that people started making farms and stuff like that to fight with. And they fought for quite a long time. Now, just because, a group comes in doesn't mean necessarily that all of the players are bad. I'm trying to remember the dude's name. I want to say they called him KP. I really don't know. I may need to talk to Ara about that. And Ara was, when I started playing, she was the R5 of an alliance called DBI. Disco Ball Inferno. That's what I remember. But Ara knows a lot of that history. And of course, Fed Up knows a lot of that too. And Huff knows a lot of it. But Fuck was EOS in 491 when all that happened. And of course, being Fuck, we fought back. We're always the underdog, always fighting for 491. So anyone who thinks they've got the best of us and they're taking over 491. Well, hate to tell you this, but Fed Up's the most stubborn son of a bitch I've ever fucking met. And he will make you pay for it. Anyway, he did that back then. They fought with their main accounts, actually. So a lot of those people that had their mains in 491 never grew. They were a lot smaller. If you look at Up Your Day, he's actually in 420 right now with that account. That's Huffschmied. Huffschmied and Up Your Day are the same player. And all the little ups, that's all Huff. His accounts should be as big as the 511 fucks, in my opinion. But he fought tooth and nail. So stunts your growth when you do that. And that's why we often don't recommend fighting with your main account. Fed told me very, very early on, you keep your main account in the main alliance, and it is the Sunday Cadillac. The ones you want to fight with are going to be your alt accounts. Not necessarily your farms, but your alt that you treat as if it's a main, and you build it with all the hospitals and the boot camps that they recommend. But yeah, you use that one as the derby car and let your main be your main. Pretty, and let it grow. So that was a lesson that they learned for us, and then later we all implemented that. So in 491, Fed and Huff and Duck Mayo Uno and Hobo, they all fought against the big huge pirates that came in. And eventually a lot of those guys that came in and created destruction, they left, and Fed was able to open up a conversation with Ara and a player named Boobs, and Daphne. Daphne is also known as Viper. She's the one that originally created the Discord for 491, and she was in an alliance called B&B, and those players, they were all really big compared to me. They had come in with all the pirates, but then kind of, I guess, maybe fractured off. Keep in mind, this is before my time. But Fed opened up a conversation with them, and they started coming to an agreement so that things could get back to normal and we could build 491 back up. So Fed, being Fed, went and created a new FUK in 581, and that's where I started. Now, I mentioned this in the last video that I didn't originally think this was something I was going to play. I downloaded this game for my kids to just kind of have something passive to do during their downtime, and quickly realized that there was way more to this game than the little ads you see on Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that. So my kids, actually I do have one that kind of has played, and Fed kicked his ass out because he wasn't active, but obviously my kids don't, they do play video games, but this is now a game that mom and dad play, not necessarily them. So when I started, the recruiter in 581 was the Butcher of Men, and Butcher was just the greatest. I really enjoyed my time with him, and Fed was the R5 there. Believe it or not, at the time, Fed actually had an avatar that was a dude. All of his other accounts, except for that one, has always had a girl avatar. So I actually started out thinking he was a dude, which he is. But my avatar was not. Mine was a dude, and everybody thought I was a dude. And I didn't really think about it. I was just doing my thing. And then I started realizing they were calling me bro. And that went on for a while before I told Fed, hey, I'm a chick, dude. But everybody did. They thought I was a dude. To the point where one of our players would literally send me pictures on Discord of his guns, and we'd be like, yeah, man, you're getting buff. So he was sadly disappointed when our bromance ended and suddenly I was a chick. But that came much later. In 581, everybody always assumed I was a dude. And that's where I became Yo. I just picked a name. I picked the name Yo It's Me Too because I tried Yo It's Me. I don't know where that came from. I just typed that in and it was already taken. So I added the number 2 and that was my name. And Fed started calling me Yo. It took me a little while to realize he was talking to me. But eventually it clicked and that's now who I am in the game. Very in the very beginning of 581, and I don't know how long 581 had been open, or it had to have been within days. But after I joined FUK, Fed sent out a mail and was asking for people to be R4s and to be the titles, like, the militarist and the overseer and the diplomat. And I was like kind of figuring out the game still. So I was like, well, the militarist obviously has to do with military. There's going to be strategy involved in that. And there's no way. I'm not strategized at all. Then you have, Butcher was already the recruiter, and he obviously doing an amazing job because here I was. And I knew I was not diplomatic at all. I tend to upset people often, and I'm way too honest. So I'll tell you, you're being a dumbass if you're being a dumbass. And that's not very, there's no diplomacy in that. I'm brutally honest. So I knew that diplomat was not going to be something I could do, but I can oversee the shit out of something. I can organize it. I can make it make sense and try to keep track of things, very easily. So I sent them the mail and I explained all that. And I'm like, I could be your overseer. I can watch what the alliance is doing and make sure that they stay on the right track. And that's what I did. I was the overseer for, I was hoping just at least until I got tired of playing the game. And Fed had other ideas in mind, but anyway, so I was the overseer. I kind of stayed out of the state business. I would every once in a while respond to, if somebody did something they weren't supposed to and tile marched or, did something they weren't supposed to, I would jump in there because I was the overseer. It was my job to make sure that inside the alliance we were conforming to state rules and alliance rules and all that good stuff. I would jump in for stuff like that, but I didn't deal with diplomatic things or any of that. And I was taking all the information that other people were putting out, like in chat and in mails, and I was documenting it. So we would have it, and then trying to organize it on Discord too. But in 581, we had kind of a strange situation going on there. FUK was the number 1 alliance. We were the biggest, strongest alliance in that state when it first began. But the state was weird because one of the alliances had the biggest player, and it wasn't FUK. We were collectively the strongest, but we didn't have the strongest player. And the strongest player was really big compared to the rest of us at the time. So he would go around and, swing his dick around and shit. And we were just, I realized in hindsight, this guy, his name was ATK. And I realized later that he was actually encouraging the state to grow quickly. And in order to do that, he would go and attack you for doing shit that he didn't want you to do, and it would piss you off and you would grow faster. That was his strategy, and it worked really well because FUK became really, really strong. But the problem was that the other alliances didn't want fucking power, and they did pretty much everything they could think of to take us down, and we just we were a good team. 581 is where I started realizing, we're family. We're a family here. We got each other's backs, and you can't fuck with us. And when the state started getting really aggressive, well, in the end, what they ended up doing was bringing in another alliance to be their bodyguards. And then they had people infiltrating FUK. One of them actually was the militarist. Her name was Annie. Well, she had a couple of different names, but we refer to her as Annie now. Little Annie Adderall. And she would do stuff like when Fed would go offline, she would be really rude to the smaller players and get them to quit. And I was just kind of watching it, and I'd send Fed a mail and be like, you really need to keep your eye on this chick because there's something wrong with her. And Fed was always like, dude. Fed was way more laid back and relaxed than I am. Like I said, I'm brutally honest, and I generally will upset people because I will tell them they're fucktards. But it ended up being true. Annie actually belonged to another alliance called Anno, and Anno had that big player in it, if I remember correctly. She was actually infiltrating us, and she ended up leaving. Fed demoted her, and when she wouldn't do as told, and she ended up leaving and is no longer with us. And very shortly after she left, suddenly that alliance, Anno, actually surrounded FUK, and they tried to get us to depose Fed, and it just wasn't going to happen. I told our alliance and the state in general that anybody who tried to do that was going to be burned, because no, we're FUK, and Fed Up is FUK. So anyway, around that time that happened, and then we made the decision to go ahead and fly out and go to 491. And I do believe that if it wasn't a conscious decision on his part, I do believe that 581 was created to be in 491. That alliance at the time was maybe 10 people and maybe a handful of dead accounts and 10 active players. They were hurting. In 491, they were actually creating the state rules and getting organized and trying to build the state back up. But FUK was way too small at this point to actually meet the requirements for NAP. So they would actually come and join FUK and help them do Wasteland King so that we could have NAP. So a lot of those players that did that for us, Daphne and Aura and Viper is Daphne, Boobs, they did a lot for our alliance, trying to get us back up on our feet. And then when 581 came in, they actually made the requirements for Wasteland King. They set it where we would be able to join and then handle our own NAP requirements. So we're eternally grateful for their assistance and consider them to be honorary FUKs. Now, Viper, she's actually the one that started the 491 state Discord, and she ran that until she left the state. Now, I'll get into more about 581 flying into 491 in the next video, but I just kind of wanted to start out with the 581 stuff and give you a feel of what our mindsets were at the time. We flew out of there and burned burned the state as we were leaving, and we never looked back.